evening, friends. This is Thomas Walker, coming to you in the hush of the night to tell you a story of shadows and locked doors that gave way, of men who moved like whispers across the floor. Tonight we begin the curious case of what the newspapers called the crime of the century, the robbery that stripped Brinks Incorporated of more money than anyone had ever stolen before. Boston, Massachusetts, January 17th, 1950. A city thick with soot, the tenements, packed shoulder to shoulder, a hard place for honest men to make a living, and a haven for those who lived by darker means. At 7:27 p.m., in the brick building on Prince Street, the workers at Brinks were finishing up for the night. The safe stood open on the second floor, ready to swallow the day's collections. Cash, checks, securities. Millions worth. The men moved methodically, returning sacks of money as they always did, never suspecting that tonight would be anything but ordinary. Then, without warning, they were upon them. 5 figures, silent as snowfall, faces hidden behind grotesque Halloween masks, gloved hands and soft-soled shoes ensuring they made no sound. With mechanical precision, they tied the workers, sealed their mouths with tape, and went to work. Less than half an hour, more than $2 million vanished into the night. Gone. Without a shot, fired. The largest heist the United States had ever seen. And as the thieves melted into the frozen streets, only the ropes, the discarded tape, and a single chauffeur's cap remained behind. A silent testament to the precision and the audacity of the unknown men. When the Boston police and the FBI descended upon the scene, they found precious little to go on. No fingerprints, no clear descriptions, only a whisper of what had passed through that building, like a cold wind. The robbers had not spoken much. They knew the building, its halls, its locks, even the rhythm of its alarms. Far too well. Too well for it to have been anything but the result of months, perhaps years, of quiet, careful planning. By morning, the city's underworld was ablaze. Hoodlums were dragged in for questioning. Suspects watched day and night. Rumors bloomed in smoky bars and back alleys. Names whispered, threats muttered. But for all, the noise the trail led only to dead ends and silence. Then somewhere in that fog of confusion, someone noticed a green Ford truck, seen parked near Prince Street just as the crime unfolded. A plain truck, stake-bodied, canvas-topped. Nothing much to look at. Nothing much until it was found weeks later, smashed to pieces, hidden inside. Heavy fiber bags at a frozen dump in Stoughton. The ground was too hard to bury it, but someone had meant to. Someone had meant for it to vanish, just like the men who drove it. And so, the noose tightened, ever so slightly, around a few men who lived not far from that lonely dump, men who suddenly had something worth hiding. The robbers of Brinks had pulled off the impossible. They had vanished, men without faces, without names, leaving only a string of dead-end clues behind them. But all things left in the cold begin to crack. The pieces of that battered truck hinted at something more, something close to home. 2 of the prime suspects lived not far from where the wreckage was found. 2 men with reputations for strong nerves and stronger tempers. Joseph Specs O'Keefe and Stanley Gusciora. Both were known to the Boston police. Both had pasts thick with stick-ups and bad debts, and both, when questioned, spun alibis as thin and worn as the soles of their shoes. Still, there was no proof, And in Boston, in 1950, suspicion alone could not open prison doors. So the investigation widened. The FBI sifted through neighborhoods like sand through fingers. They questioned past and present Brinks employees. They knocked on doors in darkened tenements, tapped on windows in smoky taverns. But every new lead seemed to curl up and die in the cold. The robbers had not spent their winnings foolishly. There were no sudden new Cadillacs in the driveways, no grand homes purchased overnight, just whispers, just unease. By June of that year, fate gave investigators a minor mercy. O'Keefe and Gusciora, far from Boston, were arrested in a small Pennsylvania town, caught with stolen guns, stolen goods, and the same scowl that marked them at home. Jailed now for other crimes, they remained stubborn, silent about Brinks. Neither would talk, not yet. Meanwhile, back in Boston, the underworld began to shift like restless ice. The names of other men began to surface. Anthony Pino, the quiet caseman who knew locks better than most knew their own homes. Joseph McGinnis, liquor store owner, underworld broker, a man who smiled too easily. Adolph Jazz Maffey, Henry Baker, Vincent Costa, names spoken low, passed like cigarette smoke from mouth to mouth. All had offered alibis, all claimed innocence. But again and again one time came up, 7 o'clock in the evening. 7 o'clock, January 17th. The hour when the robbers would have been gathering. The hour when Boston, for a few short minutes, had changed forever. Even as suspicion tightened around these men, no one would break rank. Not even O'Keefe, bitter and angry behind his Pennsylvania cell bars. Not even when, 2 years to the day after the robbery, an anonymous caller phoned the FBI, whispering names like poison over the wire, names the FBI already knew and could not yet prove. The months turned to years. The money, it seemed, had simply dissolved. Some believed it lay hidden in the Boston harbor. Some said it was buried in fields outside the city, wrapped in oilcloth and secrets. Some believed it had been spent quietly, bill by worn bill. The men grew older, the tensions sharpened. Trust, once strong, began to rot from within, and somewhere, in the stillness of the late hours, a man named Specs O'Keefe, cold, alone, forgotten, began to wonder if perhaps he had been left to rot too. One night, he made a choice that would change everything. On a gray January afternoon in 1956, nearly 6 years after the crime, O'Keefe gave in. He summoned the FBI and told them everything. Names, places, plans, all the cold details laid bare. Anthony Pino, the mastermind, McGinnis, Maffey, Costa, Baker, Gagan, Richardson, Faherty, the hidden truck, the stolen keys, the silent approach through the playground, all of it spilled out in slow, bitter words. The arrests came swiftly, one after another, hoodlums and strong arms, men who had once moved like shadows, now shuffled into courtrooms, blinking against the hard light of day. The trial stretched on for months. O'Keefe, the traitor and the witness, stood before them, telling the jury what the city had whispered about for years. In the end, the verdicts were simple and heavy. Guilty. Sentences came down like iron gates. Life in prison for nearly all of them. The perfect crime had not been perfect after all, and yet, even with convictions, the Brinks case refused to close neatly. Of the $2.7 million stolen that January night, more than half, over $1 million, was never found. A few bundles turned up years later, hidden behind a wall in a Boston office, rotted and molded, wrapped in plastic and old newspaper, a grim little treasure, discovered not by clever deduction, but by pure accident. The rest, lost perhaps in the gambling dens and back rooms of the country, or sunk into some lonely marsh, blackened by time. Maybe even still out there now, silent and waiting under layers of dust and earth. As for the men, some died behind bars. Others were swallowed whole by the streets they once ruled. One was found dead behind the wheel of a wrecked car, a bullet still lodged somewhere deep inside him. None lived free for long. Boston moved on. The streets changed. New gangs rose. Old tenements fell. But on certain winter nights, when the fog rolls heavy down Prince Street, you might still feel it. That thin shiver of something unfinished. A memory pressed into the bricks, into the shadows where 8 men once crept, faces hidden, hearts pounding with the oldest dream of all, to take it all and vanish. But friends, no one truly vanishes. Not forever, not even in the cold. This has been Thomas Walker, signing off and wishing you a safe and quiet night. Good luck out there. You'll need it.